In order to explain the notion of transactional authoritarianism, I will focus on the rule of the regime of Aleksandar Vučić and his Serbian Progressive Party, the regime under which thoughtlessness has been cultivated strategically as a political program. To describe this program, one may resort to the term kakistocracy, the government by the worst, least qualified, and most unscrupulous, based on the authoritarian management of transactions. To understand the idea of cultivation, one may ask, what happens to the ruled when the worst, least qualified, and most unscrupulous rule them? Or what happens when the sphere of politics and the political becomes fully reduced to transactions? So, seen from the outside, Serbia is a country with an unresolved territorial issue, ambiguous relations towards the EU, and a raw material country of interest to various actors. But seen from the inside, Serbia is the country where there is no separation of powers. The rule of law has long been contested. The state is captured by the party that turns every individual and the society as a whole into its clients, and the public good into a resource for the profit of a selection of private individuals. Public sector, private businesses, the church, and the media are in the service of the ruling party, counting 700,000 members in a country with a population of over 6.5 million. In opposition to the previous decades, when politics was, for better or worse, ideological, the party rules without an ideology or with a mishmash of conflicting and confusing ideological messages. There are no values this regime stands for, and standing for values is caricatured. Any form of political thinking or action has been marginalized or lumped into politics. That is something bad, and anyone who's accused of doing it, the opposition parties, civic sector, independent media, a few of them, or the street, is portrayed as an enemy of the state and the people, the two entities craftily merged in the figure of the president. Serbia is the place seemingly cleansed of the political, even in its most basic sense. The institutions, such as the parliament, the opposition, the elections, have been obliterated, although all of them formally do exist. Instead, governing is transformed into managing transactions, or publicly into giving what is once due or threatening to take it away. This game of state-arranged give and take created an even bigger abyss between the rich and the poor, turning both sides into the debtors of the regime for grandiose transactions or for minuscule services such as employment or faster hospital acceptance, especially in the smaller towns. In this type of authoritarianism, liberties are not just reduced, but sold off on the assumption that everyone is corruptible and that lives do not have too high a value. What this does, both to those who consent and to those who do not, is a gradual corruption of reality that turns people into depraved creatures who resign from the exercise of thinking and nurturing those bonds that create and maintain the fragile space Hannah Arendt, for example, called the world. The party is not a corporate behemoth fabricating corporate units such as the nation. The state and the people as notions are captured and heavily rewritten. The president is the people, the party is the state, and all of us are their singular beneficiaries who singularly get something from them, or rather from him, the president, without an in-between. The party fabricates singularities where no one cares for anything beyond their individual interest, no one sees the world from the other's point of view, no one believes in the commonality of sense or common space, even less in something so abstract as the common world. The habitual, pugnacious "so what" as a response of the regime to any of its innumerable infringements, behind which stands "we can do anything, we are responsible to nothing," that spills over to the subjected, who are either posing in the same irresponsible manner, especially if transactions vouch for them, or are in fear of being targeted and thus withdraw to solitude where they are responsible only for themselves. Now, revolts are allowed, as this provides an image of a democratic country for the outside, but none will bear fruit, so they also serve the regime to demonstrate that the ultimate exhaustion is their only effect. Solitude and helplessness are thus cultivated in a general atmosphere of endarkenment, where one does not know, is discouraged to want to know and act upon knowledge, and where knowledge is devalued and rejected as harmful to singular transactions, common sense is endangered. The categorical imperative groomed by the regime in Serbia is resort to your singular sense as there is no other. Do not deliberate, transact, and you will fare well. If a tragedy happens, shrug your shoulders and say, it was not me. So the student protests that began in December 2024, lasting to this very day, fight against such a categorical imperative, against a notion that everything, water, earth, common goods, and everyone has a price tag, which is far too often in Serbian impoverished society quite low. The students fight against the notion that we are all corruptible, up for grabs, and existing solely in the service of the regime, which makes us ultimately valueless as human beings.